What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. First question. Do you think that Tatum will continue to hunt difficult pull-up threes late in games or against favorable matchups in playoffs when it's so clear that driving and kicking and hoping for the ball to come back to your hands for a high percentage shot is a better option? I don't know if I'm just very accustomed to your show and your words, but man, it has become so obvious when he's taking these contested difficult shots that don't go in anyways. In other words, if it's so obvious to us on TV, why hasn't Boston adjusted that part out of his game yet, or will we see it adjusted come playoffs? So I think the reality is Jason Tatum is probably trusting his work here, and he probably just has a great amount of belief in that pull-up jump shot. That doesn't mean it's a good shot, but that I think is his reasoning behind taking it. I do think the coaching staff could be a little bit more, deliberate about trying to talk him out of taking those shots. But at the end of the day, too, it's a fine line between that and taking away a player's confidence. You want him to be confident taking those shots. And he has made them in the playoffs at times. We saw him make them in Game 7 against the Philadelphia 76ers, right? That was a big part of his late game comeback there. But we do have a really large sample size of him being largely inefficient with that shot. And the reality is, in my opinion, he's young still. And eventually it will click for him as he learns to truly value every single possession at a higher level than he does now. I just think it's a matter of time. Most of these guys don't figure this kind of stuff out until their late 20s, early 30s, right? That's why all the great superstars, don't win until they're 26, 27 years old, right? So I just think it's only a matter of time. He just needs to figure out, what the best way to attack every individual possession is for him. Next question. Do you have any interest or capacity within the framework of the show to mix in some WNBA coverage and or analysis? It could fit in nicely as some NBA offseason opportunities for your for content that wouldn't need to replace your NBA offseason coverage and opportunities for rest and relaxation for you, but maybe some coverage that would give you the chance to address interesting observations about the basketball and personnel in that league. There's certainly other shows out there that are exclusively covering the WNBA, but I'd certainly be interested in hearing your perspective on WNBA basketball and have some fun hearing you talk shop about some of my favorite players and teams in that league. Thanks for all you do and keep up the great work. So here's the thing. It's not just the WNBA. There's a lot of sports out there that I don't watch as much as I'd like. I'm a huge NFL fan. And I went into this season, I ended up paying for the all 22 package because I wanted to kind of learn more about the schematics of football just because I've always been a fan of the game. And then the season starts and I'm so busy with my job, it just falls on the wayside. I barely use that package, so I might as well have ripped up $70. And I haven't followed the NFL very closely. I'm a big college football fan. I'm a big college basketball fan, a huge U of A basketball fan. We have a really good team this year. I've only watched 4 or 5 of the games. And it's just because this job is so demanding from the standpoint of think about all the things on this show that we still kind of need to hit. Trae Young, hooping his ass off, would like to talk about it at some point, right? The Cavs, despite being without Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, have been kind of feisty. They're worth talking about. I could go on and on. There are so many NBA topics. I'd love to do a rookie rankings at some point, right? And talk about Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson and the Thompson twins. I'd love to do all that stuff. But the reality is it's so difficult to find time for all of these things that if I have an extra hour, I'm going to be this morning, I'll be I need to hit the Pelicans. They're hooping. I need to get to the Pelicans. And so I crammed in time today to watch Pelicans Wolves and to do a deep dive into the numbers. And if I have time, I direct it towards the NBA. And so even though I'm a huge basketball fan who loves watching women's basketball, specifically, I had a great time watching the women's tournament last year. I thought Caitlin Clark was one of the most entertaining, television phenomena that I've seen in the last couple of years, and what she did in the tournament last year. I'd love to do that. It's just when I have extra time, I devote it towards the NBA because I just want to keep doing a better job of this. And like, I don't think there's a version of it where I could cover other things and still do this as well. It would have to be part of some larger shift to just covering all sports in a lesser capacity. And right now, first of all, I'm not even sure I ever want to do that. I love the NBA. It's like, you know, the second most important thing in the world to me, to my family and friends, right? So like, for me right now, like I just don't see it in the cards. That's not to say never, but for right now, I just don't see a universe where I start covering the WNBA just simply from the standpoint of how much time I have. Next question. You move the Thunder into your contender tier. Are there any moves that could make their pool of assets that moves them into your Denver, Boston tier right now? And if so, would you make that move and wait and see what happens this playoffs before changing anything? They're young, but rookie contracts will end, and they might not be able to retain all the key guys. So, again, I've said this before on the show, but an upgrade at that 4 spot is what would move them into the contender tier for me. I agree from the standpoint of like there not being urgency. I don't think they win the title this year anyway, just simply from the standpoint of like, you need experience. Like I always talk about battle scars. Like you need to be scarred by losing in the playoffs so many times that you suddenly break through. There's nobody that gets to cheat that process. The Warriors lost in 2013 and lost in 2014, right? Like you suffer on the way to that point. It's a very important part of that process. The Nuggets lost to the Lakers in the 2020 bubble, right? Then they lost in 2021. Then they lost in 2022 when they were injured. It's like, it's all part of that process. And you get so terrified of losing that you start to make these crazy extra efforts. I remember in the 2012 NBA Finals, that was a big storyline. Like Shane Battier is like making these crazy efforts for extra rebounds because he's been in the league for a decade and he just wants to win so bad, right? And it's like as good. It's not to say that the young players aren't competitive. It's just it's hard to explain other than to just say there is another level to this. And as good as the Thunder have been, the other level is winning in April, May, and June. And that is not something that teams pick up overnight. It takes time. And so from that standpoint, you wait to make that all-in move for the right player. Now, if the right player is available at this deadline, get him now. Because the more time you have to build that chemistry, the better. Might as well build that playoff scar tissue this season, right? But if the right guy is not available this deadline, you can be patient because I don't see this year ending in a championship for the Thunder. I have to include them just by virtue of their overall talent in my list of contenders, but I would be shocked if they won the title just based on everything we've learned from NBA history. Next question. And this is less of a question, just a comment. I got like 4 Celtics fans saying this in the comments. Definitely a worthy game to talk about, but just to be clear, that's 7 for 7 on Celtics videos immediately following a loss. Let's try to match that amount with videos after they win, if that's not too much to ask. Lots of Celtics fans said this. To be clear, I pick the show, the kind of the layout of the show and which games I'm going to cover in advance. So like, when I covered the Celtics, I planned on covering them before the game. I haven't looked back to see. I don't agree with that stat because I literally covered the Celtics beating the Lakers on Christmas Day. So it's at least some amount of inaccurate. That said, like I have no vendetta against the Celtics. I would pick them to win a playoff series against everybody in the league except for Denver, and I'd give them a chance to beat Denver. We've talked, one of the reasons why we don't talk as much about them on this show as some of the other teams is they have a very clear style that they play, and it doesn't change. They're not a team in turmoil. They're not a team trying to figure out how they want to play. They're not a team that has major rotation concerns, and so they're not a team that like has as much like debate surrounding them other than, can they get the job done? Is Tatum capable enough of being that guy? Which I think is something we've covered in detail on this show. But the reality is like I've picked them in a lot of big high leverage games, and they've lost a lot of those big high leverage games, which has a lot to do with some of my concerns surrounding the Celtics and what their potential is in the big picture. But here's the thing. I'm going to keep picking Celtics games based on major matchups throughout the season that we're going to cover. And if the Celtics win, that we're going to cover them as if they won, right? So like it's not any sort of cherry picking Celtics losses. This is predetermined stuff here for the layout of the show. Next question. The Warriors have experienced lackluster performance from Klay Thompson, Kevon Looney, and Andrew Wiggins. Seems unusual for this group of historically consistent players to be struggling at the same time. It seems like their issues are more than on the court. What is the likelihood that the chemistry and the buy-in from their core is broken? And if this continues, is Steve Kerr's job in jeopardy? So I'm not going to talk about Steve Kerr's job because we talked about that in the Warriors segment earlier today. But here's the thing. To talk about each of those individual players, Klay Thompson's just getting a little bit older. That's all that is. Kevon Looney, is a big part of it is scheme. I think as the overall offensive talent on the floor has dipped, having Kevon Looney out there has become a bigger problem than back when Andrew Wiggins was playing really well and back when Klay Thompson was playing really well, right? So as the offensive talent has dipped, Kevon Looney's offensive shortcomings have kind of risen to the table, and that was a big issue down the stretch last night. Andrew Wiggins, your guess is as good as mine, man. I don't know what happened to him. He's just not the same guy. And I wish I could give you some sort of explanation, but I don't know what to say. The dude, he's not shooting well. He's not defending as well. He's not making decisions as well. He's just not the same player. And that is a really unfortunate circumstance for the Warriors because it's changed the trajectory of that team over the course of the last couple of years. Next question. Please tell us what shoes you wear while hooping. Would love to know what your favorites have been throughout the years, what you're currently wearing, and how your play style affects your preference. Thanks for putting out such great content. We don't deserve it. Well, I disagree with that last part, although I do sincerely appreciate the support and the kind words. Basketball shoes. When I was younger, I played in Kobe's a lot. Played in Hyperfuses when I was in college. That was my go-to. I wore Hyperfuse lows my second year in college. That was one of my favorite shoes that I played in. But a lot of Kobe's after that. Post Kobe, it's been like I basically try to find whatever new shoe is performance-based. I shouldn't say performance-based. That fits my foot in the way that I play best. And it's funny, when I was younger, I used to care so much about what the shoes looked like, and I'd find a pair that looked sick and I'd buy them, right? But like now I could care less. All I care about is like, does it feel good in my foot and does it feel good to hoop in? And so the last two that I've been, because what I'll do is like I'll find a pair of shoes that I really like, and then I'll just buy as many of them as I can and just ride it out until that shoe doesn't exist anymore. So the previous shoe to because right now I'm wearing the Ionescu's, very similar to Kobe's. I'm on my second pair of them. One of the things for me is I like a lighter, low top shoe, kind of like a Kobe. But the problem is I weigh 230 pounds, and so I wear through them super fast because I play like a guard. I play out on the perimeter, and so they just break down really fast. So I do go through shoes relatively quickly, unfortunately, but I like having that lighter shoe because I like to be quicker on my feet. But the Ionescu's have been my go-to shoe as of late. But before that, I went through 5 pairs of LeBron 19 lows, which is crazy because I never was a LeBron guy. I think his shoes are generally too heavy and kind of uncomfortable, and the traction's not great. Never been a huge fan of LeBron basketball shoes, but the LeBron 19 lows were really, really nice, and I really liked those, and I went through 5 sets of them. So like, I'll probably end up riding out the Ionescu's for the next year or so, and then I'll be on to the next one. But the Ionescu's kind of follow this Kobe trend, and so I kind of have a feeling that that's going to be my go-to basketball shoe for a little while. And I know I've said this on the show before, but I can't even begin to describe how much better it's been just being back out on the court because that injury saga was just an absolute nightmare. I'm slow as shit. It's still going to take a couple of months for me to get to the point where I can play at the level I was playing before, but it just feels good to be back out there. I just don't get having the Lakers as a top 5 contender when they clearly need the trade and not have Minnesota in there, who are not currently a theoretical team. You have spoken often about theoretical basketball. You've spoken how theoretical basketball is simply that, theoretical. Lakers aren't even guaranteed to be a top-tier contender with a good trade. They're certainly not top 5 at the moment, and got totally owned by the Wolves the other night. So here's the thing. The Laker thing is up for debate. So is the Wolves thing. Like, they're like up for debate topics, and then they're not up for debate topics. Like, if you tried to sit here and tell me that you didn't think Denver was a championship contender, I'd be like, yeah, you're just wrong about that. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? But this stuff is up for debate. And here's the reality. When I say theoretical basketball, to me, the Wolves are the theoretical team because I haven't seen them make a long playoff run. I watched them last year be not good enough to beat Denver, right? But like I haven't seen them against multiple matchups. I haven't seen them have to make multiple defensive adjustments or offensive adjustments against multiple opponents. You have to win 4 series to get through. I have personally watched LeBron James and Anthony Davis win 6 playoff series. I just watched them last year. Beat the 2 seed Memphis Grizzlies, beat the defending champion Golden State Warriors, and then lose to the eventual champion Denver Nuggets. That's not theoretical. They have issues within the regular season that they need to address. They are not a theoretical basketball team. I know exactly what they look like in the postseason. That to me is exactly why I have the Wolves below them. You should know this. I've been working on adding things to the show to have more reverence for the regular season. That's kind of like what my power rankings are. That's kind of like what my MVP rankings are, right? Like I want to do a better job of acknowledging the regular season accomplishments within the 82. But I am like, it takes a lot to move me in a regular season. Like it just takes a lot because I value postseason basketball is almost like a different sport. It's not really a different sport, but it's like such a higher level of basketball in terms of intensity and physicality and adjustments and it like an experience suddenly comes to the table and superstar talent comes to the table and all these different things. And like the problem with the Wolves is like, I know Anthony Edwards is going to be really freaking good one day, but like, I don't know when. And their half-court offense sucks. It was a huge issue against the Pelicans when they got their ass kicked the other night. Like they have all these big red flags and they don't have a playoff foundation that gives me margin for error with them. Notice I haven't taken the Warriors off of my championship contenders. Why? Because I know what Steph, Clay, and Draymond can do in a playoff series when they have 2 other really good players on the floor with them. And if they go out and they make a trade and they bring back a Pascal Siakam or a Lauri Markkanen, they're going to be really damn good again. And I know Steph Curry is one of the best playoff players in the league. To put it simply, Steph's a way better playoff player than Anthony Edwards, in my opinion, right now. So that to me makes even Steph and the Warriors somewhat less theoretical than Minnesota. I have Minnesota higher than Golden State right now because Golden State has major personnel issues. I actually think the Lakers, who have personnel issues, have significantly better personnel than the Golden State Warriors. They've underachieved in a lot of ways. We've talked about their coaching situation. I think the Lakers are actually pretty close. And that's why I still have them at 4th in my championship rankings. I don't view them as theoretical because I've seen LeBron James and Anthony Davis and what they can do in a playoff series. More importantly, LeBron and AD look better than they did last year. So to clarify, theoretical basketball to me is more referring to the playoffs, not the regular season. Like, you are correct. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been a much better regular season team than the Lakers. But that to me is not the same as what I saw in the postseason last year when I think LeBron James and Anthony Davis are just a significantly more impactful playoff duo than Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns or Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, however you want to look at it. Doesn't mean the Wolves can't win. I just view them as more of a long shot as a result. Last question. Did you forget about the Clippers as contenders, or do you think they aren't contenders? Here's the thing with the Clippers. I'm really concerned about their front line size and a lot of their shot selection stuff, the James Harden playoff stuff. So for me, I'm not saying I won't put them on there. As a matter of fact, I expect that I probably will at some point this season. I just want to see a couple more high leverage games. I want to see them in like a major nationally televised, like on the road in Oklahoma City against the Thunder, which I wanted to see the other day, but Kawhi was out. But like, I just want to see them get a couple of really big high leverage wins before I add them to the contender list at that point. Because there's a lot theoretical with the Clippers as well, unfortunately, as it pertains to their front line.